April Jackson, a name known in the tech world, steps through the bustling doors of O'Hare Airport, her presence quietly commanding attention. At 42, she is the CEO of Jackson Dynamics, a tech empire she built from the ground up by resurrecting failing startups into profitable ventures. Her name is etched in the annals of industry accolades, her face rarely seen in public yet undeniably powerful. Today, she strides through the terminal with the same controlled intensity that has defined her career, wearing a sharp, navy suit that speaks of authority without a word. There are no flashy logos on her leather tote, just the quiet elegance of someone who knows exactly where they stand in the world. As she approaches the first-class check-in counter, her calm demeanor betrays no sign of the storm about to unfold. She holds her boarding pass firmly in her hand, confirming her seat in the luxury of Horizon Air's first class. But little does she know, this flight would not be just another routine journey. Behind the counter stands Tyler Grayson, a wiry agent with a lackluster tie and a bored expression that hardly seems to notice April's arrival. His fingers drumming on the keyboard are the only acknowledgement of her approach. He doesn't look up when she slides her boarding pass across the counter, her name bold and unmistakable, clear as day on the screen. Instead, he mutters something about checking the system and scans the ticket. A brief glance at the screen, then another scan, followed by a dismissive flick of his wrist as he hands it back. "No, you're not on the list," he declares flatly, as if it were some minor detail that could easily be brushed aside. The words hang in the air, a slow-moving wave of disbelief. April doesn't flinch. Her voice, cool and steady, cuts through the tension. "It's there. Check again. Properly." The steel in her tone is unmistakable. She doesn't plead or panic. She simply states the truth. But Tyler's smirk, brief as it is, suggests otherwise. He lifts his eyes for just a second, locking gazes with her. But before he can finish his thought, he's already brushing her off. He shrugs and gestures dismissively toward the economy boarding area, his tone casual, bordering on rude. "Maybe you meant over there," he says with a wave of his hand, already shifting his attention to the next passenger. A white man in a polo shirt, who receives a polite, efficient greeting. But April is not just anyone, and this is no minor oversight. She stands firm, her posture unwavering. As her voice drops lower, its edges sharpened with resolve. "I'm not moving. This is my ticket. First class, confirmed. Look again." Tyler's smirk falters for a moment, but his arrogance holds firm. He types furiously at the keyboard, his fingers pressing the keys harder now, like he's trying to force the system to comply with his version of reality. Still, the screen refuses to acknowledge her presence. He leans back, eyes narrowing, and dismisses her once more. "I told you, you're not on this flight. Step aside, or I'll call security." The air around them thickens with tension. Passengers shift uncomfortably behind April, the growing buzz of irritation echoing through the terminal. A woman in a cashmere scarf huffs audibly. A businessman taps his foot impatiently. Everyone feels the weight of the situation, but it's April who stands at the center, unshaken. With a quiet resolve, she pulls out her phone and opens her email, showing him the confirmation of her first-class seat. "Explain this then," she challenges. But Tyler scoffs, flipping the phone back at her, the paper skidding across the counter like an afterthought. "Fake glitch. Whatever. Doesn't match. You're done here." In that moment, April realizes the disdain, the casual dismissal that so often comes with being underestimated. But she's not done yet. Not by a long shot. April stands her ground, her back straight, her gaze unwavering. The check-in counter between her and Tyler Grayson is no longer just a barrier of metal and glass. It's become the dividing line between respect and disregard, between justice and humiliation. Around her, the bustle of the airport continues, but she's in a different world now. One where she must demand her space, her dignity, and her right to be treated with the respect she's earned. "Step aside, ma'am, or I'll have to call security," Tyler repeats, his voice tinged with impatience, but there's a flicker in his eyes now, a slight hesitation, as if he's beginning to understand that this isn't just another casual passenger dispute. April's eyes never leave his. She's calm, but there's an unspoken intensity about her that seems to fill the entire terminal. No one moves. Time stretches. "I'm not moving," she says, her voice quiet but carrying an authority that makes Tyler falter. She places her phone back in her hand, the screen still showing her confirmed first-class ticket. "This is my seat. My ticket. I'll stand here as long as I need to. You check it again, or I'll call someone who can." Her words hang in the air. A challenge, a promise. For a split second, Tyler seems to lose his composure. His fingers hover over the keyboard, shaking slightly, the smug confidence of earlier now crumbling. The facade is cracking, and the quiet strength in April's demeanor is starting to unnerve him. He shifts uncomfortably, glancing over at Lindsay, his colleague, who's been standing by, arms crossed, watching the scene unfold with a mixture of disdain and skepticism. Lindsay's eyes narrow as she takes in the tension building between the two. There's no mistaking it. April isn't just a woman who's been inconvenienced. She's someone used to taking control, someone used to being in charge. And it's clear that Tyler isn't prepared for the confrontation he's found himself in. But Lindsay, the other agent, is quicker to react. She steps forward, brushing past Tyler with the calculated confidence of someone who's dealt with unruly passengers before. "What's going on here?" she snaps, her tone sharp, almost offensive, as she sizes up April, taking her in with a dismissive glance. "Is there a problem with your ticket?" April's voice remains calm, but there's an edge now, like the sound of steel being drawn from its sheath. "The problem is with your system. This ticket is valid, and I'm not moving until you fix this." Lindsay snatches the boarding pass from the counter, scanning it once more, her eyes skimming the screen with practiced indifference. She taps the keys faster, as if the speed might somehow make the problem disappear. But the screen beeps in rejection, and the corner of her mouth curls into a tight, judgmental line. "Nothing's coming up. I'm sorry, ma'am, but you're not on the flight," Lindsay declares with finality, her voice laced with the same dismissive tone as Tyler's. The words are like a slap, but April doesn't flinch. She stands firm, refusing to let the words penetrate her resolve. The ripple of discomfort spreads through the line of passengers waiting behind her. Some shift their weight, exchanging murmurs. Others glance at their watches, growing impatient. April can feel their eyes on her, but she doesn't break. She feels a knot tighten in her chest, not from fear, but from something far deeper. A sense of injustice, a sense of being erased, invisible. But April's not just anyone. She's not some powerless passenger to be brushed aside. She's a CEO, a leader, a woman who has fought her way to the top, and she's not about to be reduced to a faceless figure in a crowded terminal that as the seconds stretch on, the tension in the air becomes palpable. It's almost suffocating. a mix of uncertainty and anticipation. Tyler's fingers begin to drum nervously against the counter, the once confident agent now visibly unsettled. Lindsay's stance shifts, her arms uncrossing slightly, as if she's unsure of how to proceed. April's phone buzzes in her hand. She doesn't flinch. She's already made the call she needs to make. Her finger hovers over the screen as her eyes never leave Tyler, locking him in a gaze that says, "I'm not backing down." Without missing a beat, she taps the screen and dials a number, her voice still as calm as ever. "Marcus," she says, her tone clipped, efficient. "I'm at O'Hare, Horizon Air Gate. They're denying me boarding. I need you to handle this. First-class tickets. Confirmed. Handle it now." The moment she hangs up, she turns back to Tyler and Lindsay, her eyes cool and calculating. She says nothing, but there's a quiet storm in her gaze. Tyler's fingers hover over the keyboard again, but this time there's no confidence in his movements. He mutters under his breath, his impatience growing as he slams the keys harder, each press more frantic than the last. But the system continues to glitch, to falter, to reject her ticket, as if it's mocking his authority. Lindsay glances at Tyler, then back at April. "We'll call security if you don't move," she threatens, her voice slightly shaking, but her eyes are no longer as sure of themselves as they once were. April doesn't budge. She simply stands there, her silence a powerful weight in the room. The entire terminal seems to hold its breath as Tyler's frustration mounts, his knuckles white against the edge of the counter. The seconds tick by like minutes, each one slipping by slower than the last. Finally, after what feels like an eternity, the screen flickers, then freezes, a chaotic blur of digital error. A sense of unease ripples through the crowd, murmurs of confusion spreading like wildfire. The gate area is no longer just a place where passengers wait. It's become a battlefield of wills, and April is determined to come out on top. She waits. Her eyes never leave Tyler, who is now visibly sweating, his tie loosened as he frantically tries to reset the system, each keystroke adding to his panic. The air feels thick with tension as April stands tall, unyielding, her presence demanding justice. The silence in the terminal is almost deafening now, and yet, she doesn't speak a word. She knows that in this moment, her silence speaks volumes. The terminal is now thick with tension, a suffocating air that clings to every passing second. April stands unmoved, the weight of the moment bearing down on Tyler and Lindsay, who are both clearly rattled by her unwavering resolve. Tyler's fingers tremble as he slams the keyboard again in frustration, and Lindsay, her arms crossed tight across her chest, refuses to meet April's gaze. It's clear they both underestimated her, and now they are caught in the web of their own dismissive arrogance. The air around them crackles with anticipation, as if the entire airport is holding its breath, waiting for something to break. And break it does, in the form of Greg Hull, the gate supervisor. His sudden arrival is like the sharp clang of a bell ringing through a fog, cutting through the oppressive silence that has filled the space. Greg's tie is askew, his shirt slightly unbuttoned at the collar, his brow slick with sweat. He's clearly rattled, but his eyes quickly lock onto April's, recognition flashing through them like a shot of electricity. "Miss Jackson!" Greg's voice is strained, almost panicked. He's out of breath, as though he's run a marathon just to reach her. And now that he's here, he looks like a man desperate to make things right. "I'm so sorry for the inconvenience. There's been a system error. We're fixing it right now." April doesn't flinch, her gaze steady and piercing. She's not interested in his apologies. They sound hollow, empty, like the words of someone who has heard them 1,000 times but never truly meant them. She waits, the seconds stretching, her eyes never leaving Greg's as she crosses her arms, her posture unyielding. "Fixing it!" April's voice is soft, but it carries an edge that cuts through the chaos. You're going to fix it? That's the best explanation you've got. Greg stammers, taken aback by her calm yet forceful tone. His hands twitch at his sides, as though he doesn't know where to put them. I apologize again, Miss Jackson. It was a system flag that caused the issue. It's being corrected now. April's lips tighten into a thin line. She doesn't want vague words or empty promises. She wants answers. Real, concrete answers. You're going to correct it, she repeats, her voice growing colder, sharper. And how exactly did this system flag come to be? Why was my ticket flagged in the first place? Why did your agents? She emphasizes the word. Your agents assume I didn't belong here. Greg opens his mouth, but the words falter on his tongue. He looks toward Tyler, who is standing a few feet away, trying to avoid eye contact, his face flushed with embarrassment. Then his gaze shifts to Lindsay, who stands just as frozen, her eyes locked to the ground. They don't speak, but their silence says everything. April's eyes narrow. She's not backing down. I asked you a question, Greg, she says, her tone flat, controlled, as though she's already heard enough excuses to last a lifetime. I want to know why I was treated this way. I don't want some vague explanation about system errors. I want specifics. I want names. The room falls silent. Even the usual hum of the terminal seems to fade as passengers watch the scene unfold. The tension is so thick, it feels like it could snap at any moment. Greg looks down at the counter, his shoulders sagging in defeat. The color drains from his face, and his fingers clench into tight fists at his sides. His eyes flicker to the screen in front of him, the digital chaos still playing out behind the glass, but nothing is changing. The glitch persists, the error message blinking angrily at him, as if mocking him for his failure. I don't know, Greg finally admits, his voice trembling slightly. I don't have access to the full system logs. I can't see why it flagged your ticket, but I can get those answers. I can contact corporate. No, April interrupts, her voice sharp, cutting through the air like a knife. That's not good enough. I'm standing right here, Greg, and I'm not leaving until I get the full story. I'm not a customer you can shuffle around. I'm not a problem you can sweep under the rug. I want to know why. There is a pause, a moment where everything seems to freeze. The air feels heavy, the pressure building as Greg stands there, caught between his responsibilities and his growing panic. He glances toward Tyler and Lindsay again, his expression one of silent pleading, as though looking for some kind of escape from the situation. But there is none. April is relentless. She stands tall, unyielding, her eyes locking onto Greg with an intensity that makes him shrink. You will find out, she says, her words final. And you will tell me, today. Greg nods, his throat tight as he swallows hard. His voice cracks when he speaks again, almost apologetic, but tinged with fear. Yes, ma'am, I'll get the information. I'll make sure it's sorted. Please, just give me a moment. April doesn't respond. She simply stands there, arms crossed, her gaze unflinching, her presence like a heavy weight pressing down on him. The tension is unbearable, like the calm before a storm, and yet April remains utterly composed. She doesn't speak again, but her silence is more powerful than any words could be as Greg steps back, pulling out his radio and muttering into it. April watches him carefully. Her mind is racing, not with anger, but with something colder, disappointment. How could they assume so much? How could they treat her like this without a second thought? Her eyes flicker to Tyler and Lindsay again. Their faces are pale, their arrogance gone, replaced by the uneasy quiet of people who realize they've made a grave mistake. They don't dare look her in the eye. They know, deep down, they've just crossed a line that's difficult, if not impossible, to erase. April's phone buzzes again in her hand, but she doesn't pick it up. Marcus is no longer needed. She's already taking control of this situation, and no amount of corporate apologies or empty excuses will change that. This wasn't just about a mistake in the system. It was about respect, about recognizing her as a person, not just a face in the crowd. She's not just a passenger anymore. She's a force, and she's about to make sure they know it. And then, as Greg speaks into his radio again, his voice shaking with urgency, a new message crackles through the air, and the tension in the room reaches a fever pitch. "Miss Jackson," Greg says, his voice now a whisper, barely audible as he leans toward her. "They're pulling the logs, corporates on it. They're confirming your seat. It's being reinstated." April watches him closely, her eyes never leaving his. She waits, her heart thundering in her chest. She's been waiting for this moment, the moment when they finally realize just who they're dealing with. And when it comes, it's sweet. But she's not done yet. "No," she says, her voice low, but full of authority. "You're not escorting me anywhere until I know exactly what happened and who's responsible for this. I want names." Greg's face pales further, but he nods quickly, his voice trembling with panic. "Yes, ma'am. I'll get the details. Promise. Just please, let me handle this." But April doesn't let go. Not yet. Not until she has all the answers. The seconds stretch into what feels like hours, and the tension in the air seems to grow heavier with each passing moment. April stands resolutely at the counter, her posture unwavering, eyes locked on Greg as he mumbles into his radio, his voice nearly drowned out by the surrounding noise of the terminal. She doesn't move, not an inch. She knows this is the moment that could change everything. Not just for her, but for everyone watching. The quiet hum of the terminal is broken only by Greg's increasingly frantic voice as he speaks into his radio, urging corporate to verify her ticket. His hand shakes as he clutches the device, his knuckles white, eyes darting nervously to April. She stands still, her arms crossed over her chest, watching him closely, every fiber of her being focused on making sure that this moment does not slip away. Her mind races not with anger, but with a cold, precise determination. She's been wronged, and she's not walking away without answers. Finally, after what seems like an eternity, the crackling radio bursts to life. Greg's face tightens with relief, though it's clear he's still shaken. The tone of his voice changes, now laced with an urgency he can't quite conceal. "Miss Jackson," he says, his voice wavering just slightly, "I've just received confirmation. Your ticket is valid. There was a mistake in the system, an error that flagged your ticket incorrectly. It's being corrected now. You've been cleared." April doesn't flinch. She doesn't smile. She doesn't react at all. Instead, she stands there, the silence hanging between them like a looming storm cloud. The validation of her ticket is only a small piece of the puzzle. She's been humiliated, disrespected, treated as though her presence was a mistake. This moment of confirmation is necessary, but not enough. "I see." April responds coolly, her voice steady, but carrying an unmistakable weight of authority. "And what about the people who caused this mistake? What about the agents who refused to acknowledge my ticket, who dismissed me without cause, without even bothering to check properly? What will happen to them?" Greg's eyes flicker toward Tyler and Lindsay, who are standing a few feet away, their faces pale and their shoulders hunched. They both look like they want to disappear, their confidence evaporated, leaving them exposed in the harsh light of the situation. Tyler, once so smug and dismissive, now avoids April's gaze entirely. Lindsay, her arms still tightly crossed, looks anywhere but at the woman who just held the entire airport in check. Greg gulps, his throat dry, as he takes a step back from April, his hands wringing in an anxious display of helplessness. I'm sorry, Miss Jackson, but that's not up to me. It's corporate's decision." April's eyes narrow, and she steps forward, her presence a weight in the room that Greg cannot escape. "I didn't ask for corporate's decision, Greg. I asked what you are going to do. What are you going to do to hold your employees accountable for this blatant disregard for a paying customer?" There's a long pause, one that feels like a lifetime. Greg shifts uncomfortably, his eyes flicking between April, Tyler, and Lindsay. He swallows hard before his voice cracks again, barely audible. I'll report it, ma'am. I'll make sure this is addressed with the proper authorities." April's expression doesn't change. She's heard enough of this. She wants more. She deserves more. Reporting it isn't enough, she snaps, her voice cold and biting. It's not enough to just sweep this under the rug and pretend it didn't happen. You will hold them accountable. I want action. I want to know they'll be retrained, that they'll understand exactly how wrong they were, and that they won't make the same mistake with another passenger. I want them to feel the weight of their actions. Greg's face pales even further. He looks at Tyler and Lindsay once more, and this time, there's no avoiding the truth of the situation. They've been exposed. They've failed, not just in doing their jobs, but in doing so with a level of arrogance and dismissiveness that can't be overlooked. The weight of April's words hangs in the air like an unspoken truth, one they can't deny. I'll make sure it's done, Greg says, his voice tight. I'll personally make sure they're retrained and that this situation is addressed properly. April looks at him, her gaze unwavering. Good. And if it isn't? If you fail to follow through? Greg visibly flinches. He knows exactly what she means. He knows that failure here will come with consequences. Not just for him, but for the entire system that allowed this to happen in the first place. Then you can expect to hear from me again, she responds, her tone leaving no room for doubt. I'll be watching. I'll be waiting. Tyler shifts uncomfortably on his feet, the silence in the air now thick with the weight of his guilt. His earlier smirk, the dismissive glance, the assumption that he could push April aside. They all come rushing back to him now, but it's too late. April has seen through it all. She's made it clear that she won't stand for being treated this way, and she won't allow others to suffer the same fate. Lindsay, too, is visibly shaken. Her stance, once defiant and defensive, has crumbled. She no longer looks like someone in control. Instead, she looks like someone caught in the headlights, unsure of how to move forward, unsure of what to say. April turns away from them, finally allowing the tension in her body to ease, just slightly. Make sure this is taken care of, she says over her shoulder, her voice a sharp command. And don't let me find out it wasn't. Greg nods quickly, his face pale as he watches her walk toward the gate. As she moves, passengers in line begin to murmur, some exchanging looks, others still unsure of what just happened. But one thing is clear, their attention has been captured. April Jackson may have been a passenger today, but she's shown them all just how powerful it can be to stand up for what's right. As April reaches the gate, she's met by a flight attendant who greets her with a nervous smile. The woman is clearly trying to make up for the earlier incident, and April can see it in her eyes, the apology that's never spoken but felt deeply. April doesn't respond immediately, but she gives a slight nod, signaling that the issue has been resolved. It's not about the flight anymore, it's about something much bigger. It's about dignity, respect, and making sure that people know their worth, no matter how they're treated. She boards the plane, her back straight, her head held high. She doesn't need to look back to know the lesson has been delivered. She knows the system will change, slowly but surely, and she'll be there, watching, waiting for the next moment when someone else needs to stand tall and claim their rightful place. Today, April Jackson won, and the ripple effects of this victory would be felt far beyond the walls of Horizon Air. April steps onto the plane, the weight of the confrontation slowly lifting from her shoulders, but a sense of victory begins to settle in. As she walks down the narrow aisle toward her first-class seat, she feels the eyes of other passengers on her. Some glance up with curiosity, others with a hint of admiration. But April isn't concerned with their attention. She knows something more important has been accomplished today, something much bigger than a flight or a seat on a plane. She settles into her seat, a wide, plush chair that's a world away from the chaos she just left behind. A slight smile plays on her lips. It's not the satisfaction of winning a trivial battle. It's the quiet triumph of knowing that she stood up for what she knew was right, that she held her ground against a system that tried to dismiss her, tried to make her feel less than she is. And in doing so, she's reminded herself and everyone around her that respect is not negotiable, that individual rights are sacred, and that no one should ever have to endure discrimination or injustice without a fight. April leans back in her seat, her posture still unyielding, but now with a subtle sense of peace. The hum of the engines starting to roar fills the cabin, and she lets her mind drift, reflecting on what happened in that terminal. The moment she walked up to that counter, she knew it wasn't just about the flight anymore. It was about something deeper, something that transcends airports, flights, and even the superficial encounters that many of us dismiss every day. She knows, as she closes her eyes for just a moment, that this experience wasn't just for her. It wasn't just about getting a seat on a plane or getting her way in that specific moment. It was about showing others that it's okay to stand up when they're wronged. It was about demonstrating that one person, one determined, unwavering individual, can shift the course of an entire situation. In her heart, she feels that she has done more than just secure a seat in first class. She's taken a step toward creating a world where people don't back down when they're treated unfairly, where they don't accept being dismissed or undervalued simply because of who they are. The truth is, what happened at that counter could have happened to anyone. It wasn't about her being a CEO or having power in the business world. It was about her demanding the same level of respect any human being deserves. Whether you're a CEO or a customer on a budget, no one should have to feel invisible, to feel less than worthy of their place in this world. April wasn't fighting for a title, for recognition, or for material success. She was fighting for something far more essential: dignity, respect, and the basic human right to be seen for who you truly are. As the plane starts its taxi toward the runway, she watches the world below her grow smaller. A symbolic moment, perhaps. Everything that just transpired in the airport, the tension, the confrontations, the uncertainty, seems insignificant now. But she knows deep down that what she did will ripple outward. The lesson she imparted, not just through words but through her actions, will carry with her, impacting those around her, and perhaps even those who witnessed the events unfold. People might not remember her name, but they'll remember the way she stood firm, the way she didn't back down when it would have been easy to do so. It's a lesson that transcends this specific incident. It's a lesson that applies to everyone, everywhere. When we are faced with injustice, no matter how big or small, we have a choice. We can either remain silent, let the status quo continue, or we can raise our voices, stand tall, and demand that our rights be respected. April Jackson didn't just show us that standing up for ourselves is possible. She showed us that standing up can make a real, tangible difference in a world where the noise of everyday life can often drown out the voices of those who are wronged. April's actions remind us that silence is not always golden. Sometimes silence is complicit. Sometimes silence allows injustice to thrive. And sometimes silence simply allows disrespect to go unchallenged. But when one person, just one person, chooses to speak up, to stand firm, to push back against the tide, that's when change happens. That's when things shift. And that's exactly what April did. She made a choice. She chose not to let herself be dismissed. She chose to make her voice heard in the face of indifference and ignorance. She chose to demand what she knew was rightfully hers. And in doing so, she set an example for others to follow as she relaxes into her seat. April's mind drifts to the passengers she passed on the way to her seat. Some may have seen her confrontation as an interruption to their day, but April knows the truth. Her confrontation wasn't just a personal victory. It was a victory for everyone who's ever been treated unfairly, for everyone who's ever been overlooked or dismissed. It was a victory for the quiet ones, the ones who might not always have the courage to speak up. It was a reminder that, when injustice rears its head, it's not enough to simply let it pass. We must act. We must make our voices heard. The flight attendant comes by, offering a soft, nervous smile as she sets down a drink for April. April nods, her gaze steady, her posture confident. The flight attendant's smile brightens, a flicker of warmth and acknowledgement crossing her face. She doesn't say anything, but in that brief exchange, April sees it, the recognition, the understanding. It's a silent agreement between them, a shared moment of respect as the plane soars into the sky. April's heart beats a little slower, a little steadier. The battle may be over, but the lessons it carried are just beginning. And she knows deep down that she's not done yet. There will be more fights, more moments to stand tall, more chances to speak up for what's right. But with each step she takes, she grows stronger. And with each lesson learned, the world becomes just a little bit better. If you've taken anything from April's story, it's this. Never let anyone tell you you don't belong. Never let anyone make you feel less than you are. Stand up for yourself, and for those who may not have the courage to speak up yet. The power of one person is limitless when they choose to stand firm against injustice. If the story moved you, if it inspired you, then don't let it end here. Subscribe to our channel and join us as we continue to explore stories of strength, resilience, and the power of standing up for what's right. Because the more we share these stories, the more we remind ourselves and each other that we can all make a difference. Together we rise.